I promise you this lesson is going to be really interesting because we're going to bring in the HTTP object that comes with Node. So we can get rid of a lot of the stuff we had here. I'm going to simply clear that out. And to see that we've got the same relationship as we're bringing in our own custom modules, we've got some pre-built ones within Node, and one of them is HTTP. So what does HTTP do? So let me show you. So now if I do node index.js, we can see we don't actually see anything being output quite yet. And because this object is the HTTP object, we need to actually listen to a port. So let's set that up, and we're calling it HTTP, and we need to create a server. So this already comes as a default within Node. So let's call it site. And you can give it any variable you want. You can also bring this together so you don't have to have it as separate objects. And create, so this one is called create server, so that makes sense. And it's got a function in here, and it has a few parameters. So there's some callback parameters that come. So we've got our request value and our response value. So typically you'll see those used as short formats for those. And then also we need to close off the rounded bracket as well. And then within here, so this is where we do all of the really cool stuff. So we can console log out. So for now, let's log out hello world. It's just as what we were doing in the earlier lesson. And I'll show you this is going to make a whole lot more sense later on. And then the other thing that we need, so now that we've set a value of site, let's do site and select a port that we want to listen on. And typically, oftentimes you see port 3000 used, so let's use that one. So now we can close off some of the stuff we have here. And let's open up a brand new browser window and go to localhost port 3000. So when we go there, obviously we don't have anything there yet. So this is where the really cool thing comes in. So let's do our node.js. And we can see that when we enter in that command, unlike before, it seems like it's just hanging there. It's not giving us that prompt anymore. But if we go to localhost 3000, we don't see anything being output there. But interestingly enough, we see hello world. So if I go and if I refresh, and what's happening here is that every time I'm reloading the page, it's firing off that console. So even though it doesn't have any information on what we're trying to output within our localhost page, it's able to run that functionality that's in here. So try this out for yourself. Pause the video, get that HTTP object, and then select a port you want to listen to, create that HTTP server, and run it within your browser. And you can see that there's the connection between every time you reload your browser to that port, it picks up and it listens to that. So next, let's have some output because, of course, it's going to look a whole lot better if we're actually outputting some content into localhost 3000. And using the response object, so this is response res, response, and that's what we're getting back when we create the server. So response, and let's set a header. And there's different types of headers. We can set different content types. And typically if you're using text or HTML, so we can specify the content type that we want output. And then we need to specify some content to output. So again, that response object and end. And then within end, if we want, we can pass some information. So let's do h1 and hello world. And h1. And close that h1 off. And now let's go back to the page and we'll see what happens. And of course, we have made changes to our code. So what we actually need to do is before we try to get any of those outputs, we have to stop our server from running. So you can do that with Control-C on a Mac. And we can see that as soon as I stop that, this page just says it isn't working. And all we need to do is just start it up again. And I've got a really cool solution coming up for this later on as well. So we see that we've got it running, we refresh the page, and there we go, hello world. So we got that hello world being output there. We see that we've got hello world here. So we're able to output content from our Node application into the browser. And then every time anyone goes to port 3000, they're able to see this information. So there's actually a few other ways to do this as well. So we can do res and write. So this gives us the ability to write some content. So sometimes you're going to see that it's within write instead of within end. We always need to have that end as well. So if you do that, and let's change this up a bit. And of course, we need to stop. So Control C, and then start it back up again. And then we can go to the port, refresh it, and we can see our changes have been made. We've also got the option to get some additional information. So we can console log out, and we can get some request information. So this is the request being sending in, and we can also get the response. So we've got headers. And we can also do console log and request URL. So we can actually see the URL that's making the request. So let's go back out, Control C, Node.js, start it back up again, refresh the page, and actually we're going to see our information being console logged out here. So all of this information we see once we restart. So actually what I'll do is I'll just restart again. And you can see once it restarts, we don't see anything yet until we actually load the page. So when we load a page, you see that all of the stuff gets loaded. So this is the header information. We've got where our host is, and a ton of just information here. So we've got the text HTML application, and we've got our hello world. So we've got a lot of information there that we can make use of. So that's coming in the headers and the URL. And of course, we can also pass in data there as well, or we can output data. So let's set that up. So const and data, and let's create some JavaScript object. Create a JavaScript object. So first name, comma, separate that out. Last name. And if we actually want to see the content that's being output, we can actually output it within a JSON format. And this time, instead of writing out something, I want to actually do JSON and stringify. So we're going to use the JavaScript stringify and output it as data. And there's one other thing that we need to update here as well, because we're not actually outputting as HTML anymore. Let's output it as JSON. And of course, we are going to be making use of this later on as well. So it's important to understand that there's different content types that we can output. And again, go back in and let's clear this out for now. Or Control C to stop it, clear, and let's start it up again. So Node.js. And now when we refresh the page, so we're getting our output within a JSON format. So go ahead and try this out for yourself. Open up your editor and your terminal and set up your own local machine, just using Node. And then pass some data and have some fun with it. Pass some information here. You can change the different headers, as well as you can write different content in HTML format out onto your page. And coming up, we're going to continue to expand on all the really cool and amazing things that you can do with Node. So there's a lot more coming up.